Welcome to Storytelling with Lindsay Bednar.
This is kind of a presentation that I did for that group of SD31, but I kind of modified it for you to specifically kind of outline where I came from and what I'm doing.
And if you could just
This,
speak to the
be-
even SD31, what is that? What is your,
oh,
yeah,
sure. SD31, that's terminology called Senate District 31, which is the northern Anoka County area people that represent on the Republican side, and I was the leader of that organization. Um, this presentation is I put together to kind of explain to people how getting uh, COVID-19 Delta pneumonia affected me not only from a health wise, but from a mental and spiritual side. So, um, as we go forward here, I can and tell me if I'm getting this right. I want to also make sure that your people that are listening to this right now. This is not political. I don't care if you're whatever side of the aisle you're on. COVID-19 affected us all.
yeah.
We've got friends that didn't make it. We've got friends and family members that died. We got friends and family members that they're suffering still
Mhm.
with the after uh, math of this. And then I'm not pro-vax and I'm not anti-vax. So I want to make sure that people understand this is my opinion and this is what happened to me. And it's about basically personal responsibilities and freedoms and rejecting anything that people want to shove down our throats. I think each of us as individuals need to make our own choices.
I appreciate you saying
So,
that. I think it's quick for audiences. I would say my audience is greater than most about not putting people in the box. I think that's why they tune in to what I bring forward as we're trying to do away with the divisiveness. But absolutely, we live in a very tribal society, and people want to assign labels very quickly. So I'm with you. I appreciate you saying that.
okay. I don't have each slide up and I'm not going to read each of these slides, but I just want to kind of give you guys an overview of um, I actually felt this inner voice telling me to put this thing in writing. And just to tell you, Lindsay, I have started a book. I've never written a book at all myself, but I am documenting what I'm doing. But I have picked the name of it.
Awesome.
And the name of my book is Thank God I Got COVID.
Oh, wow.
So it's, you'll hear as we go forward here, as I kind of come through. I'm not going to go through the overview like this. And there I am before COVID. So that's going to be my headshot. Okay.
For those who can't see what is
Oh,
on the screen, it is Mark's head on what appears to be like a Arnold Schwarzenegger body.
yeah. Well, my daughter, when I got out of the hospital, she sent that picture to me. So
That's
I told her,
awesome.
well, that was the before picture. Um, anyways, let's talk about what happened to me. I was running a company in Ramsey. I had about 35 employees. I was the CEO and president of a company called Depot Star. And we did work for other medical companies, other aviation companies. And I have my own products. I'm an inventor and I'm one of those guys that's active. I'm kind of always thinking. I never shut down. I keep going, going, going. One of the products that I make and still make to this day now is the Alpha Systems Angle of Attack product line, and that product line is and has saved thousands of people's lives. It basically shows pilots how much lift the wing is producing as they fly to keep them away from the dreaded stall spin accidents.
Wow.
So, um, every year we do two shows. I've got a show coming up here at Sun and Fun Air Show in Florida at Lakeland Airport, and then this beginning of April, and then Oshkosh is the hugest one. Oshkosh is the If you love airplanes, if you love propellers, if you just love looking at or touching and feeling, um, uh, Oshkosh is the place to go. So I had employees that went with me. Um, one guy out of Chicago, another guy out of California, and they all flew in, and we drove down to Oshkosh from Minneapolis here with our booth. We had a big 20 by 10 booth that we set up to help pilots see what we make, do a hands-on demonstration, and um, so we're there for a whole week. It's 7 days, and it is the dustiest, smelliest, just the greatest event that you can imagine, with tens of thousands of aircraft, hundreds of thousands of people, and they're all coming through the booth, the aisles. It's kind of like these shows that we have up here in Minneapolis, Lindsay.
Yeah.
You know, the um, home and garden show
Home
kind
and
of
boat
thing.
show, and yeah,
Yeah, the boat show, kind of like that.
yeah.
So I set up this booth, and we get to talk to hundreds of thousands of people. And um, during that show, it's so dusty and stuffy. Normally, you have sinus congestion, blah blah blah. And we during that show, I was fine. I could taste everything. None of the side effects that you think that you'd have from COVID. I always took vitamin C and all the precursor stuff, but I never had a chance to really go get a COVID-19 shot. And there was so much that I was uncomfortable about with the after effects and all that. I just didn't do it.
Hmm.
And so we're down there for 7 days. About 5 days into it, I start developing this little tickle in the back of my throat. And it got worse, but I could still taste every night we go out for dinner. I could taste everything. Everything's great, and I wasn't weak. I wasn't tired. But Saturday, the day before the last show, or the last day, which was Sunday that week, I started getting a little bit fatigued at the end of the show. But that's not uncommon. The show is just brutal for talking with customers and all kinds of fun stuff going on.
I was going to say, when you're interacting with that many people, that would have to be exhausting after a while, nonetheless.
Oh, it is. But on your screen, you can see one in the lower left hand or right hand corner. That's Harrison Ford.
Oh yeah.
These guys, oh, he came to my booth. The guy in the John Grunsville, he's a NASA pilot. I mean, you get to meet people that in your wildest dreams you'd never get a chance to go up, shake their hands, say hi, and we have the same love for aviation. That's kind of where that's one of my passions, if you will. And
Right.
to be a part of it, to be make a product that helps pilots fly safe, that's even better.
Right.
S- So, long story short, Sunday, I'm just dragging. We have to shut the booth down, load everything up, drive back, and we had a dinner before we left, and then it's a 5 hour drive from Oshkosh to home. And I was just, it was starting, something was hitting me. And I just thought, well, it's just exhaustion from the show. But got home Monday morning, got them on their airplane to go back to California and Chicago. And I went right from my office back home, and I didn't get out of bed until that following Thursday. And eh, my wife made me go in for a COVID test on that Thursday, and it was positive for COVID-19. And we called the triage nurse, and the triage nurse asked certain questions, and she said, "Get him to the hospital." Well, she had to help me get to the car. My wife did, because I had no strength. I mean, to crawl from the bed to the bathroom was kind of a chore. And she got me in the car, drove to Mercy. And I want to say firsthand, if there are first responders, nurses, doctors, physical therapists, um, I have to get on my knees and thank you people, because if it wasn't for the kindness that I had, the bedside manners of the nurses that cared for me, the doctors that believed in me, and we'll go through some of that issue too. But if it isn't for those people that really deeply care about the people that they help recover from whatever surgery, whether it's COVID-19 or whatever, um, it it it's partly to do. My recovery was partly to do because of their kindness.
Mm,
So I want to say a big shout out to all the people that help people recover. You mean everything to us.
mm.
So
I delivered
um,
both babies at Mercy Hospital and I had an incredible experience. They're amazing.
I'll tell you, I met 45 nurses and about a dozen doctors. And I'm going to say this truthfully, almost all of them. I mean, I'll say all of them that I had direct contact with, whether it was in the ICU or in the recovery floor or the incoming. They were great. They absolutely were great. And I couldn't say enough good things about them.
Yeah.
But um, so my wife, going back to the story, my wife got me in the line, and we were waiting there behind, probably a dozen people, and I got the second to the front, and then the incoming lady saw how bad I was because I was leaning up against the wall, and it was coming in and out, and she ran around the corner, got me one of those rolling chairs, and sorry about that.
That's okay.
Um, got me one of those rolling chairs, um, and I fell into it, and I passed out. And the incoming lady had to deal with my wife to try to get the information to me. They put oxygen on me. Now, the first thing they did, and I didn't have an oxygen meter at home, they put the oxygen sensor on my finger, and I was 76.
Mm,
Normal oxygen level is a minimum of 93 to 98 to 100%. So my body was shutting down. My organs were shutting down. The lung functions were non-existent. So I was shutting down.
mm.
So they brought me to the incoming area of the emergency room, and I stayed there for about 2 weeks because they had no ICUs available. And I was in and out of consciousness. They put me on a number of drugs. I asked if I could have hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin or something, anything that, could help me get through this faster. Because I'm going to share this. What I went through, what people go through with COVID-19 is it basically gums up your lungs, and it feels like you're ingesting water constantly. So I'm going to switch back here to my face so I can see you too.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is at what point in the pandemic?
it's in 2021, August 7th of 2021 is when I went in. There we
Okay.
go. So yeah, August 7th of 2021. I went to the ER. A week later, my daughter. I was so weak I couldn't lift my phone. I couldn't move. I mean, I was just exhausted, and I stayed in the incoming there because of no ability of ICU beds available. Um, the doctors basically are just waiting and hoping that there's an available room, and then they decide what they wanted to do. After 2 weeks, um, a, a bedroom became available, and the doctor, my cardiologist and pulmonologist, came in and said, there's a room coming available, but I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to need to put you on a ventilator. And I said, everybody, everybody that goes on a ventilator dies. The nurses know it, the doctors know it. It's not, it's almost a death sentence, to
Mm.
be honest with you. And, and I talked to my wife and I said, what do we do? We either die here or we go to the ICU and let the doctors, um, put us on a ventilator. So we prayed about it and we thought, if it's God's will, it's God's will. And so we told the doctor, okay, you do what you have to do, and I'll agree to go on a ventilator. But the odd thing was that he wanted us to sign a DNR, do not resuscitate. And I refused because when you get to know me, I'm not one of those guys to rely on anybody. My wife, my kids, friends, family. I'd rather do it myself until I just absolutely can. I'm one of those self-sufficient, I can do anything. Um, I'll help anybody else out, but I wait to ask somebody else for help,
Right,
right?
right.
And the doctor got mad. He got mad, and because he's looking at me, and it's funny. The doctors will tell you, well, you're in a very bad place, so you might want to sign that DNR because you don't want to be a burden on your wife. And I thought, well, no, I don't. But my wife knows that if I can't be sufficient on my own, pull the plug. I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
Pull the plug. I don't want to depend on, I don't want to be a vegetable. I mean, that's, some people would say, well, life is a blessing and you should try to keep it no matter what it is. And I agree to a point, but
Hmm.
I personally don't want to be a burden on anybody.
Hmm.
And so he went out of the room and went to my wife and said, talk him into signing a DNR. And she said, no, no, we know, we've talked about it. We'll know the time. And to be honest with you, we talked a little bit about what COVID-19 is and what it does to you. Every breath, every breath, inhale in, it was like inhaling water. It's like you're half drowning. And every exhale, you couldn't exhale enough water. It was horrible. And every muscle in your body, every bone ached. I found out later that I not only had COVID-19, but I had COVID-19 Delta pneumonia and bacterial pneumonia.
Wow.
That's why the doctors wanted me to sign a DNR, because basically that's a death sentence.
Wow.
So they bring me up to the room, immediately put me out. And just so you know, when you're in a hospital and they put you in the ICU, there's a new doctor up there, the ICU specialist. And I was so bad that he told the other two doctors that he wanted to cut a hole in my neck, trach me, pull me off the ventilator, and um, um, get me out of the ICU so somebody else that quote unquote could have a chance to have that life experience in the ICU. Now, they won't tell you all this, but the way they were talking to us, the way they were trying to push us through, I realized that there are a lot of people that were sick and a lot of people that were more sick than me and a lot of people that, got COVID, but they didn't get it as hard as or bad as me. But I went on a ventilator for 7 days, 7 days. And they put me on remdesivir and all these other monoclonal antibodies and all this
Mm.
quote unquote CDC guideline uh, protocols. And I asked the doctor before I went up to the ICU, why can't I try something that's off script? And they said, we follow CDC guidelines because for legal reasons, number one, if they tried something or allowed me to have something and I died from it, then the hospital would be responsible for it.
Even if you were willing to sign off on something.
Yeah. Yeah. They refused. They absolutely refused. I had a neighbor. Yeah. I was the mayor of Oak Grove for 8.5 years here. and and I was city council member before that. And I have a lot of people that respected what we did and what I led the city to do. Um, but I had a lot of friends call me up or call my wife up. They actually showed up at my house with bottles of hydroxychloroquine
Hmm.
and all kinds of alternative treatments that they wanted my wife to take into the ICU. And she goes, "How am I going to feed it to him? He's on a ventilator. I've got ports in both arms and one in my neck. I've got a feeding tube in my nose and oxygen. And now I have a breathing tube down. I can't, when you're in the ICU, you're totally dependent on and what happens there."
Hmm.
And so this went on for 7 days. And the doctors, after seventh day, the one doctor in the ICU said, "We need to pull him off the ventilator because he's not getting better." And the other two doctors said, "Let's give him 48 hours. Let's just give him 48 hours off a ventilator. He can't get much worse. And let's see what his own body can do." And the other doctor disagreed with that. They wanted to, like I said, cut a hole here, put a permanent ventilator on, and then take me out, and another person could come in the ICU until I died. And when they pulled me off, and I'm unconscious for this whole thing, and to let you know also, when they put you on a ventilator, they chemically paralyze you. I don't know if you know that or not, but that's so that you don't reach up and try to pull stuff out.
Yeah.
With all the drugs that they have you on, with all the steroids and just the muscle and the paralyzation drugs and all that stuff, you just basically can't move. And so I laid there for 7 days unconscious, and then they pulled me out again, or they pulled me off the ventilator, and I was going downhill. The 24 hours was not looking good, according to my wife. And I went downhill, and then hour 25, I started to turn around. And they have no idea why, because I was so bad, and I started coming around, and every 25, 30, 40 hour mark, I was getting better. My oxygen levels were coming back. My breathing was getting deeper. Things were turning around off of a ventilator. And that kind of goes into then the story about my near death experience. Um,
Before we get into that, could you?
okay.
So, I had heard the anybody who was intubated during the pandemic that it wasn't a good outcome. And I remember my sisters and I having the conversation with my parents saying, if it ever gets to that point, please do not allow them to intubate you.
Hmm.
Um, and they had agreed. Like it seemed to be kind of common knowledge. And so, you spoke to that. So, um, I guess the probably very naive, but an obvious question then is, why do they do that? Why did that become the practice?
That's you have a political drive. Now, this is my opinion. Um, Being in the political realm as a mayor and talking to all our representatives and both nationally and locally, you realize that there's a political drive behind it. And you had Fauci, that was supposed to be the expert, saying all these things and setting standards for the CDC and the guidelines that everybody's going to follow. Remember all the millions of ventilators that were produced,
Hmm.
and they scrapped 90% of them. And um, I, they put together a protocol, and when you've got a government organization being directed by so-called uh, a smart guy doctor,
Hmm.
um, who are we? I'm just a patient at that point, and I'm just a patient to those people in Washington at the CDC. But I'm a patient that lived, that shouldn't have.
Hmm.
And um, I wish I had that answer. I wish I could go inside and figure out honestly, what the heck were you thinking? Because after, they say hindsight's 2020, right? You could go in and, yeah, well, if I would have done this, I would have been great. But
Right.
that just doesn't happen in a hospital. You follow those guidelines.
Hmm.
But I mean, I was on, afterwards, after I got out of the hospital, I called the hospital up and I said, I want a printout of every drug that you ever put me on from day one. And I was in the hospital for 46 days and I
Wow.
was on a ventilator for 7 days. That's how bad it was. And then, well, we'll get into that. But when I came home, that was another 2 months of recovery just to learn to walk again and be able to lift my arms and all that. So, um,
So yeah, I think we can, at least say whether we know the why the ventilators ever became protocol. We know that that was the common protocol practice uh, for that time.
you know, I have a mutual business friend. He was in the aviation business, had his own company, and he's a couple years older than me, but good shape. I mean, runner, no real issues, no heart issues, kidney, liver, anything. But he's one of those joggers and eats right, not like me. I wish I was that way, but I'm not. And, but I didn't have really any comorbidity other than a little bit of high blood pressure. And, um, and you can't see my six pack abs anymore. So,
The screen doesn't go down that far. We'll take your word for
yeah, I'm not going to show you that part.
it.
Um, so, he on day 40, I was in recovery after that point. After I got out of the ICU, they brought me up to the recovery floor. And I was up there for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. And on day 40, I remember Steve was his name. And he called me and he said, Mark, I heard you're in the hospital. I just found out. I'm praying for you. I'm hoping you're doing better. And I said, God's got a purpose for me. I don't know why, but he's got a purpose for me. My life isn't over yet. And he said, Mark, I'm just wishing you a speedy recovery and all this. Well, about a month after I got home, which was a couple months then, I got a call from a mutual friend. And he said, Did you hear what happened to Steve? And I said, No. He said, Well, Steve got COVID, went into the hospital. While he was in the hospital, um, he got so bad so fast that they put a ventilator on him. When he was on the ventilator, he had a heart attack and they tried to do surgery and they couldn't do anything for him. So he died. He's not with us anymore. So that just tells you that this disease, this is real. But I think that the honestly, why did it attack him? Some of the stories that I'm going to share, and I hope you want to hear this. The nurses in recovery, I was kind of a celebrity. I mean, I'm not saying that to brag, but the nurses came in and said, "Hey, you're kind of a celebrity up here." And I go, "Why is that?" They said, "Because
Mm,
you lived." And we don't see that all the time.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I remember some of the nurses coming in and holding my hand. They were actually tearing up. And they were saying to me, we go home at night just um, crying because there's 20 something year olds that they go into their room and before they even get them on a ventilator, they die. Or a pregnant 30 something year old died, and that just haunts them. And to have somebody that they can come in and share their sorrows with, and they can talk to me. And I had this, and we'll get into that when we talk about my near death side. But when I came to in the ICU or after I got through everything, and I came out of that with such a warm glow, this overwhelming sense of positivity. It was it was just unbelievably positive. And these nurses would come in and they'd want to touch my hand and they'd want to share their stories. And I just look at them and you can tell that they're sincerely interested when they stare at your eyes.
Mm.
When somebody's really interested in what you have to say, they're looking directly at you with this sense of wonderment and this sense of you actually made it. And we want you to be the example for us that we have hope for other people, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it's just wonderful that I had that ability to just share my story of, and then every one of them that I talked to, I shared my near death stuff and my visions. And that's something that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So it's not only the medical side of being in the hospital and what I went through, the nurses, and then just the doctors. I remember the one doctor that brought me into the emergency room. He's looking at me and he just told my wife he's going to need to go to the ICU pretty quick. And I remember he was an older guy. He had curly hair, real curly hair, tall, skinny kind of guy. And day 40, day 41, he came up to my room on the recovery floor, and he knocks on. I get a knock on my door, and he comes in. He goes, "Mark, are you Mark Korin?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, come on in." And he says, "Do you remember me?" I go, "Oh, absolutely, doctor. Come on in." And he's looking at me really confused, and he goes, "You don't even look like the same guy." He said, "I'm not your doctor, but I did bring you into the hospital. I saw your condition. Do you mind if I check your vitals?" And he came over and he put his stethoscope on my chest and he's listening to my heart and my lungs and all that stuff. And he's really confused. And my wife happened to be there. And he turns to my wife and he looks back at me. He looks at my wife again and he says one word: "Wow." Wow. He's just shaking his head. Wow. I, why? Wow. But that's kind of, you know, an overview of what I went through. And from a physical standpoint. But the recovery, I mean, any doctor or nurse will tell you that when you're on that many medications, there's a sequence of events that you'll go through. Um, when you're coming off those drugs and the powerful stuff, I was on fentanyl. I was on all kinds of painkiller stuff. Um, and when you go through that, you're going to go through basically a PTSD of getting off of those medications. And I went through a sequence of, um, and this is before this sense of positivity came on with me. So I'm kind of out of sequence here. But this sense of paranoidism, I got, instead of anger, frustration, hitting, kicking, just being mean with this PTSD stuff, I was more paranoid. I had this sense of paranoia, like they were using me as a guinea pig on, the government was, it's probably my conspiracy theorist background or whatever. But no, I went through this paranoid thing, and then after that wore off, my wife said that one of the most difficult things she ever had to witness was me coming off those medications.
Mm.
And I was so paranoid. I was calling people out of the blue and making some weird statements. She took my phone away from me and I didn't know it, because I was calling my brother up saying, "Come and get me. I'm not going to leave this place alive." So she stole my cell phone and then lied to me. But I guess that's what wives do, right?
Protecting you.
Yeah, she was protecting me and protecting everybody else from my weird behavior. So, um, but from a physical standpoint, it was bad. And
Mm,
let's go back in time a little bit from this story, so I can talk about when they put me on a ventilator. I mean, I was out of it, so I had no idea what was going on to me. I was completely under for that 7 days, and then during the recovery until I came to. So I remember getting wheeled in, and this is just my vision stuff, wheeled into a room that looked like a church, but it had, if you've ever been into Mercy or the hospitals, they've got this big board at the end. It says your name, your date, your doctor, nurse, aide, how long you've been in the hospital for, in that room. And
mhm.
I came in, I was wheeled into this church with like the cathedral windows and stuff like that. And, excuse me.
Oh, it's okay.
Um, and I remember begging to die. I remember begging to die because it was so bad. And I'm not a quitter. I think you get the sense from me by now. Um, I do not quit. I come up with solutions and to problems, and that's what I've done all my life. And I think um, getting to a point where you believe that heaven is real, heaven's a better place, and God couldn't make me want to suffer this much this long. And it was horrible. And I remember just just getting to a point where I begged God to take me. And then I started on a process, and I remember specifically helping 7 people transition into the light. In detail, I remember 3 of them, 3 people. And what we would do, I had a guardian angel. This is my near death view. A lot of people will have near death experiences where they say they leave their body and then they can look down on that. I believe that's happened. But in my case, mine was a little different. My near death experience was that I was proving I had to help show God and eh, that I was helping doing his work here on earth before I left for home or heaven. And so I helped 7 people transition into the light. And what does that mean? I had a guardian angel that always helped me do this. And um, there was this room that had a 4 foot wide by 8 foot long by 6 inches high marble, white marble with black marbling through it, that sat on top of a silver base with spindled legs. And these spindled legs started out wide at the top and they would narrow down to the bottom. And it was pure, brilliant silver. And our job, mine and my guardian angels, was to take people that were going to heaven onto this table, put the body on the table. And once we got the body on the table facing up, this white light would come down from the heaven, and the body would actually lift off the table. And then it was like their spirit would come out of the body, and the physical body would disappear, and their soul would go to heaven.
Mm,
And we did that 7 times because I thought that I was the eighth person. I, I, I really thought that, okay, I've done this 7 times, Lord. The eighth time, it's got to be me. It had to be me. I couldn't believe that I was, I was helping people to prove my worthiness to show God that I'm willing to do this. Whatever you demand of me, I'll do this. And so, three of them, I remember three of these people. One was a biker, a big biker that was um, a guy that had lost his left arm from his elbow down, but he had an eagle tattoo on his back. And like the eagle tattoo had clipped wings on his left arm. So on his back, he had a full eagle or wing on one side and a clipped wing on his other side. And we took his body and put it up on the table. And the body would lift off the ground, and then the essence would come up, and his body would disappear. Another guy, I remember his name was Bob. For some reason, I just remember Bob. He was a overweight guy, but he was a salesman from Oklahoma or Texas, and he'd always go to the local diner. This is one of those little, where the cars pull up straight in front.
Hmm.
And he would go to this diner and always order chili with bacon on it. Why he would do that, I don't know. This is his favorite thing. But we would put his body on the table, and then he left. The one guy that I remember the most was a World War II bomber pilot. And there was a sequence of events, and the guardian angel actually told me, kind of gave me advice as to I needed to help him and his family because he had two children. He was stationed in Poland during World War II, and he had two kids from a potato farmer. I would remember this. I don't know. And he was over there long enough to have two children. And then after the war, he came back to the United States, and over time, he got married here in the United States. And then it was bringing those two children from Poland back to the United States to reconstruct his full family. And there was hostilities between the two sets of family. And at his funeral, there was nobody there to give an eulogy. So I helped write the eulogy and say good words based on um, my my understanding of his work and efforts. But he had the ability. He was a musician and a singer, and he wrote songs for people. As the captain of the airplane, he would help the morale by writing songs, and they would sing while they went out on the missions. Why I know that, I don't know.
Well, that's what I was
But
going to say. Are you seeing these things with the people that you're helping? Is your angel communicating that to you? What is that? What did that like? Or do you just feel like that information was implanted into your brain?
at the time, that's a great question because a lot of people will listen to me right now thinking he's making all this up or it's the drugs, right? I was on these drugs. And it wasn't. It wasn't at all because I was very coherent throughout the whole this chapter of this, and this was even before my recovery. This all happened before I even got off any of the medications and stuff, and I started going into the paranoid side. This was all part of before I woke up in the ICU. So, to answer your question, it felt real to me. It felt. Um, Let me go back here real quick. So I don't know if you can see this. If
Yeah.
you can, okay. So the light would kind of come down. I just found some pictures on the internet about the different people that I helped and what the marbling to me was. This was
Mm,
all real. I was doing this, and I had these visions of the people that I talked about in detail. Why? How could I? I've never met a guy by the name of Bob that likes bacon on his chili. I mean, that's just bizarre. Or a World War II pilot that had children overseas and brought them back. Where does this come from?
mm-hmm,
I have a good imagination, but not like that.
mm-hmm.
And then the marble, you can see on that screen there.
Yeah.
Of I picked out some marble that was very similar to what I saw on the table that we were helping, but it was much thicker and bigger. Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I I was just wondering if within your experience, if, because in some of the near death experiences, it's the, it's almost like people say we communicate telepathically. So I didn't know if, when you are with this angel, if you are getting just absorbing information, if there are messages, if it's communication,
Oh,
that
that's a
all just fascinates me.
yeah, that came into my head. He didn't speak to me. I never saw him.
Mm-hmm.
I always heard him in my without speaking.
Yeah.
That's a I never thought of it that way, but that's true. I never saw his face. He always stood behind me. He always guided me in the right direction. He always helped me.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into that was the bomber pilot was the last of the seven. And this is what is going to be interesting. It's going to be something that I've got to talk about is on the screen in front of you. It kind of shows you some pictures there of an undercarriage or a bolt. There's a term for the main bolt that holds the front axle of carriages back in the old days. It's called the kingpin bolt. It's the main bolt that holds everything together. And on a cross, for example, there's in the olden days they might have put a pin in the cross beam to the main upright, and that was called the kingpin or the kingpin bolt that held the cross together.
Mm.
And so what I did, I'm going to hold something up, and after the seventh person I put on the table, I carried with me, and I never did this before. I never had this before I went through that experience, but I carried a kingpin bolt, and the bolt represents Christ. And the further on that you tighten that nut, to me was how tight you were with your belief, your structure to your core values. And I had this bolt in my hand. And I remember specifically holding this and grabbing it and just, you know, praying that and begging God, it's my turn. And I had this in my hand, and a light came down and shined on my hand. And I opened up my hand, and the light shined on that bolt. And two wrenches appeared. And I looked at that, and I'm like, you want to take my only connection that some people have like a rosary or they have a cross that they wear that means, you know, it really connects them with their belief or their faith.
Mhm.
And I happen to have this kingpin bolt. It's the main bolt. It's that connection to Christ. I was the nut, which, you know, probably some people will think I'm nutty, but it was that connection here that I to my belief.
And this was
Now,
your
I'm going to
vision?
share something with you. I was never deep Christian, if you will. I never um I was a Christian. I tried my best to follow the Christian faith, but I was never um my wife is the guide, the rock, the foundation for my core values, and she reminds me when I'm following away from that. But back to the story, I had this kingpin bolt in my hand and the two wrenches, and I looked up to the heavens and I said, if that's what it takes to show you that I'm worthy to come home, I'll take the wrenches and take it apart. So I grabbed the wrenches, put one on each side, and took the nut off the bolt.
And this is part of your vision?
This is my vision. So I took the wrenches, took the nut, which was me, the bolt, which was Christ. And I held it up and I said, if this was what it takes to show you my worthiness, Once I got this off and holding this up, a box appeared below my hands. And I took it that he wanted to have me give this back. Can you imagine Christ is asking for the only connection I had as a representation of my faith? He wanted my faith back. He didn't want to take me, he wanted my faith. And I saw this box below, and I held the two parts up, and I said, "This is your will." And I dropped the two parts into the box. And at that instant, the box disappeared, and I came to in the ICU. And I'm like, what just happened? Why am I not dead? Why am I not in heaven? Why am I not? What's going on here? So I came to, and the nurse is standing there, and I'm just confused. I'm crying. I'm like, I don't understand why I have a chance on life again. Because before I went into the ICU, I was contempt, or I felt like, you know what, it's my time, and it's time to go home. And when I came to in the ICU, I just didn't know why I was worthy. What I wanted to do was go home to heaven. And here I am back in the ICU with tubes and everything sticking out of me. And the nurse came in and said hi to me. And I said, "Can you?" I was paralyzed, obviously, so I couldn't move. So she took her phone and called my wife. And my wife was shocked that I was calling her. And I said, "Deb," that's my wife, Deb. Um, I said, "Deb, God wouldn't take me." She goes, "What?" I said, "God wouldn't take me. I begged God to take me, and he wouldn't." And she said, "You don't understand, Mark. You just don't understand." And I said, "What am I not understanding? I'm not worthy to go to heaven?" And she says, "It's not what you want. It's not what any of us want here. It's in God's time. And if God didn't want to take you, it's because you have more to do here on this earth." And I said, "Huh, I guess it is bigger than you and I, you know?" Um, it was just so powerful when she said that. It's not up to me. But then I started thinking, like I always do, think too much. I started thinking, why me? Why me and not some 20-something-year-old that's got all of their life ahead of them? How do I live up to being back here on this earth? Excuse me.
Yeah.
How do I do this, right? How do I live up to doing God's work? And I didn't know how to accept the fact that I was still alive. So I hung up from her, and a couple days later, I was so weak, you're in and out of consciousness and all that. But I brought with me my cell phone that was and the nurse had it at that time.
Mhm.
And I had a set of earplugs in. And I said to the nurse when I woke up, I said, "Can you plug in my headset?" And I have Pandora. Do you have Pandora for music?
I
You know what it is, right?
Yes, I used to use that one. I use yeah, yes,
Okay, use a different.
yeah, YouTube Music now.
Okay. Well, I had Pandora, and I have all kinds of different genres: country, Christian rock, rock and roll. I mean, jazz, smooth jazz. Everything. And it was always on shuffle, so you never know what you're going to get. And um, so she puts my headsets in my ears, and And I'm laying there paralyzed. And I said, just go to Pandora on my phone and push play. And I have no idea what it's going to be. And this is the first song that comes up. Can you hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Why you ever chose me has always been a mystery. All my life, I've been told I belong at the end of the line. With all the other not quite, with all the never get it right. But it turns out they're the ones you were looking for all this time. Cause I'm just a nobody, trying to tell everybody all about somebody who saved my soul. Ever since you rescued me, you gave my heart a song to sing. I'm living for the world to see. Nobody but Jesus. I'm living for the world to see. Nobody but Jesus.
Whew.
That was the first song. And why that song? Now, I know writers and song producers write songs for their own reasons, but words mean things to each and every one of us. But for that song to come on, it was like so meaningful to my recovery, right? It was like, I do have a purpose here. And it's not what I want to do, it's what he's directing us to do. Just like you and your audience. Each of us have a purpose on this earth. And you choose to do whether or not you're being guided or whether you're thinking you're doing it yourself. I believe that we all have a destiny and we all have a purpose, and that purpose can be great, it can be minimal, but it's your purpose. And that was the first song. And I was so weak. I that was the only song I heard that day or that morning. That was in the morning. And then I went back to sleep, and uh I woke up in the afternoon about 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and I thought, okay, she shut my phone off, took my earphones out, and and I still had a feeding tube in, so they didn't have to bring me lunch, dinner, breakfast, or whatever. And I'm just laying there trying to recover. And I asked her, I said, would you please put my headsets back in and push play again? And I remember it's it's every kind of music out
Mm-hmm.
there typically, other than there's some music I just don't care for. But I like just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
So then I put um or she puts the headphones in my on me again, presses Pandora play, which was on shuffle, and this song came up.
Wide awake while the world is sound asleep. Too afraid of what might show up while you're dreaming. Nobody sees you. Nobody will believe you. And every day you try to pick up all the pieces, all the memories that somehow never leave you. Nobody sees you. Nobody will believe you. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows the real you. 'Cause there's a kind of love that God only knows.
And I listened to those words, and then they rang so true, because I'm telling you something that, because you don't know me, you would have never known my story. You would have never known why I'm so passionate about what I went through, and why I have the courage to come out and tell people what I went through. And having that song, God only knows. And it's true. God only knows what I went through during that time. And I just, it was like God was speaking to me through those two songs.
Mm.
So, um, I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
just,
I forgot to have my Kleenexes close by, so that was a rookie mistake.
I didn't mean to do that to you.
No,
Do that to
oh good.
myself. Okay.
I I want to write I know the first song I know I have on my playlist. God only knows, so I'm gonna have to get those the the
Yeah,
artist.
that's from King and Country.
Yeah, okay.
King and Country, and it's called, the name of the song is God Only Knows.
Yeah.
And the first one was from Casting Crowns,
Yes. Love
and
them.
it's Nobody, the name of the song.
Yeah.
And I just, uh, those two songs, I know this second one was written for other reasons, but it just hit me, how words of songs,
Hmm.
it just was speaking to me.
Oh, such a sign.
And I knew that I had to make it worthwhile. I had to push through the pain of recovery, the pain of everything. And my wife came back into the oh, that's something I'm missing. See, some people don't understand that during that time of COVID, there was no visitors, no exceptions.
Mm.
During that time of COVID, you basically, if you live or die, you did it by yourself. And that was true at Mercy too, except except for there's an exemption. It's called the compassion visitation exemption. And that's reserved only for people that are on death's door. If you're if the doctor believes that you have no choice, then you're allowed a visitor. And my doctor granted my wife the compassion visitation exemption.
Wow.
And so she came in, she was allowed to come in, gown up, and be with me for a half hour a day, but had to leave the building, had to leave the premises after that. So every day she came, she didn't miss a day. And she was there by my side throughout this whole thing, through 46 days. And, your life opens up, your mind, you realize, you get sucked into all these negative people and negative things going on in the world right now and in the past. And you just have to remember there's a lot of positivity out there, and you need to surround yourself with people that are very positive, because you need all that positivity to get you through, and to just be healthy, I think.
Mhm.
And I, after 46 days, and then I came out of the hospital, but there was no rooms for recovery, long-term recovery, because I couldn't walk. So the doctors said if I had a room that was available to me at home, they could send out the doctors and nurses and physical therapy and occupational therapy and all this to my home if my wife is willing to agree to this. And she did. So we set up a bedroom on the main level, and physical therapy came out twice a week. Occupational therapy came out. Make sure that I was doing my exercises to start walking. And I'm telling you, I couldn't even, before they'd let me out of the hospital, I had to show them that I could at least stand up, and I couldn't. I
Mm.
couldn't at all. Matter of fact, they don't want to. I don't want to admit this, but there was a time that she helped me up, and I fell to the floor, and that was the scariest thing that I'd ever. I never thought I'd be that weak. and I fell to the floor, and I was just laying on the floor shaking. And I remember this physical therapist touching the back of my back, and she's saying, "It's okay. It's okay. You'll figure out a way to get up." And slowly, I she helped me move around, and I kind of rolled over, and she helped me stand up. But I had no strength, and it hit me that hard. So it took me about 2.5 months to learn to walk again, with a walker first, and then I mean the best. After I get out of the ICU, I'll go back a little bit. After I got out of the ICU, one of the best things that ever happened to me was they have these chairs with the wheels on them, big recliners kind of thing. And they took me out of the bed, and they've got these roller things that you kind of set on, and you go from the bed to this rolling chair. And she rolled me out in the hallway. And I sat there and I said, "Please don't move me." She goes, "What?" And I said, "I never thought that I'd be able to see the hallway again. I never thought I'd get to a point where I could see it." And I said, "Just let me sit here for a while and enjoy the view." And the nurses down the aisle were all clapping for me, and I'm just sitting there and I'm just enjoying the view. And it was wonderful. And I just sat there, and then of course then you had to, okay, you're with physical therapists, so you've got to go through your, learning to walk again and all that stuff. So, and they were great. They were just fantastic.
Mm.
So, um, a lot of people, um, will, but I want to bring something up to you. I
Yeah,
want to
when you
share.
share your screen, I'm able to see.
Okay, let me do that.
All
Can
right,
you hear
I'm
that?
ready.
Yeah.
This is really cool. Thank you. Thanks for everything, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, this is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah, thank you. See ya. Thank you. It's been great. I'm so glad to go home. Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right, yeah, I'm ready.
Look at all those angels. Mm.
Can you imagine that? Let's see. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I mean, that was uncommon. There were people on my recovery floor that she said a lot of the nurses came in, and they said that there's a lot of people that got to my level that came through the being on a ventilator, but they gave up because it's so hard. It's so hard to push past that feeling of I can't do anymore, but you have to push past further. And I did. I was very fortunate. Believe it or not, I have no long term heart disease, lung damage, liver, kidney, nothing. And that doctor that looked at me on day 40 that said, "Wow," he wasn't kidding, because having bacterial pneumonia and COVID-19 Delta pneumonia, it's just unrecoverable. So they didn't want to tell my wife. Well, they did actually. They told her to start planning my funeral
Oh, they had.
before I went to the ICU. Yeah.
Mm.
So, um, so that's kind of where I came from, where I came to. I came back after 5 months of being gone from my business. I had a big building in Ramsey with 35 employees, and I made a decision to sell the building, sell the company, and I had opportunities to do some other things. But I made a decision to keep the Alpha Systems product that I invented and we're still making it out of my office here at home. So what you're looking at in the background here is my office, and I walk 75 steps to my office from my house, and I've got just three or two part time and four four or two full time and or four part time. So employees, and it's just a low key um, operation that we make products that help other pilots fly safe. And I think that must be my mission so far, is to make a product that saves pilots' lives.
That's what I was going to ask because, you know, coming through something like that, that there was every reason why you shouldn't. And like you said at the beginning, there you shouldn't be here based on the experience you went through. So, and then when you come out of it and think, okay, there's a purpose. So, um, obviously, you're serving in a way and have been serving. Um, what what kinds of mindset and perceptions have changed and shifted since then? How do you view things differently? Do you operate differently than you did before your experience?
You know, remember I told you about having that sense of overwhelming positivity? Think of in your life, think of the time that made you so happy. So, I mean, the happiest you've ever been. Just think about that time. And I had throughout coming to and after I got through my paranoid phase, I didn't have PTSD or paranoia anymore. I had this overwhelming sense of positivity. And that lasted for about 5 or 6 months after I got out of the hospital, where everything, it was like euphoria. It was
Mm.
just so wonderful. And even though I was going through physical hell, the life was great. Everything was positive. Was it hard to shut down a business after 27 years and transition into a much smaller type of operation? Absolutely. Um, I tried. That's why I stepped down from the Senate District 31 leadership role and very active role in political and behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. I think um, I think trying to live up to positive standards is difficult for us all. I have witnessed firsthand what it means to be so positive. There are days that I fall back into what I used to be, always negative and all that. And I try helping me doing this, talking to people like you and sharing this story helps bring me that positive thing back. I feel so wonderful right now because I shared this story.
Mm.
I don't know if anybody will listen to it. I mean, do they want to listen to a guy with, gray hair and, a beard?
Yes.
Well, you're too kind. But it makes me feel good that maybe somebody will listen to what you and I are talking about and think about their life and how they could make it better. And the things that we go through, the things I went through, which when you have to beg God to take you and he refuses, that opens your eyes, you know. It opens your eyes to saying, and now I'm back. I tell people, yeah, I had an opportunity to come back and I'm here again. And I'm going to make the best of what I can while I'm here. And I wish I could say that I'm always this positive, chipper, you know, um, absolute wonderful guy. But the world brings a lot of that negativity back to you.
Mhm.
Um, has it all been a cakewalk since I've been here? I mean, it's been almost 3 years now. In August, it'll be 3 years, and I still remember these things in detail. I didn't everything we talked about. I mean, my wife wrote things down so that I'd get the timeline right, but I didn't even look at them while you and I were talking. So, um,
It's that vivid, I'm sure.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I wish I could say that I'm a different person. People say that I'm different, um, but I keep getting sucked back into the negativity, and I try to push myself away. There's a lot of shows that I can't watch anymore. That's weird.
Mm.
There's things that I see on these shows and I just can't deal with it. I just tell Deb, I can't. No, we're not watching that anymore.
That's a pretty common thing with people who have had awakenings in any way, shape, or form. And I would agree with that. Even since becoming a mother, there's certain things that I can't watch anymore. Um, I don't know. I think it's very much tied to your vibrational frequency and where
Hmm,
you're resonating.
really?
Hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I think looking back on it, and I started our conversation with thanking the nurses and the doctors and the physical therapists and occupational therapists because, they do things for people that they don't even know. And the caring that they gave me inspiration to want to live.
Mm.
And that positivity, I don't want to let down. That I don't want their hard work, their abilities to take care of people like me and others, whether you're in childbirth or whether you're in a cancer situation or whether you've got a disease that they're trying to cure. You know, um, if you survive that, if you go through that, then you learn from what they offer, even though it's their job. They could be a lot worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
And that positivity, I just feel like I don't want to let them down.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and it's clear that it's it brings you to a very nostalgic place of just pure gratitude when you're talking about this experience. And as we know, when we are in gratitude, it's one of the best, places that we can reside for our vibration, for our frequency, and just e- emitting love to people around us. And so, not only is this such a heartwarming and powerful story, but what it offers you, even sharing it, not even just to your audiences, but what it offers you, I think, in continuing to do so um, is going to be so great for you. And it seems like it's a gift for both.
You know, I'm I'm at a point in my life where I could have retired. I mean, when I sold my building after COVID, I talked to my wife and my accountant, and I just said, I can't do this anymore at this level. I don't want to do this.
Hmm.
And I said, but I'm not willing to just retire. I just don't want to do that. And so that's why I kept the Alpha Systems product line and continued to manufacture it. Um, because it is something that's positive to me. If I can, as an engineer, I'm a design engineer anyways. I mean, that's what I do. But I'm also the CEO and I do everything.
Hmm.
But taking a product and continuing to do that to help people stay alive, that's the best thing any engineer could ever do.
I'm sure.
And that positivity, like you mentioned, um, that's kind of what I try to look for is projects that can help, create a benefit for people or companies or whatever it is. Um, and let's see, where was I going with this? I'm sorry, I'm just kind of overwhelmed from you allowing me to do this.
Yeah.
Um,
My pleasure.
Yeah, you know, sharing this story, um, I wasn't kidding when I started telling you that I started writing the book of this. And one of the things that kind of, putting together this PowerPoint that I did and videos and audios and stuff, I started writing and I'm halfway through chapter one. And I came up with the name Thank God I Got COVID. And it's a catchy name, but I really mean that. People think, well, why would you thank God because you had COVID? Because the experience I had in my near death experience that I shared really opened my eyes to that positivity, to what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be on the positive, instead of always negative, you look more towards the positive side. People want to be around positive people.
Mhm.
People, we're so much, you can say negative things about everybody, but you try to stay on the positive side. Now, yes, have I posted negative memes about the political party? Yes, I have. Uh, I'm still,
Human.
uh,
You're still human.
I'm still human. Yeah, and it's kind of hard to not laugh at some of the memes.
Right.
But um, oh, I kind of stepped over um, a video that I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
There was when I first um, let's see, when I first got let me see, how can I claim this? When I put this PowerPoint together, I thought, what a way to get people to understand how difficult it is to go into the hospital, right?
Mm.
And I came across this video, and if I could play it, it kind of will make you smile. Can I do
Go
this
for it.
quick?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, you ready? Can you see
Mhm.
it? Okay.
Have you ever worked with Dr. Francis? Oh, yeah. He's okay.
Just okay?
Guess who just got reinstated? Well, not officially. Nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I'll see you in there.
Just okay is not okay.
I usually do that first because it's scary, but yet, it's all in good intention, and you have to be on the positive side again. And
Mhm.
that video just is so funny that I can't get past it. So that's kind of my sense of humor.
Yeah, love it. Just okay is
So
not okay.
yeah.
So
S- so go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say what is next for you? And with do you have added time now that you've sold your company and you've scaled down, still making your products but scaled down, and what do you want to do with your added time and your second lease on life?
Yeah. Honestly, I thought if I could polish what I talked to you about and get it to a point where um, I could inspire people, it would be really kind of cool to take this to the next level and finish that book, create a TED talk around it.
Mm,
Because sharing near death experiences, I've been on membership boards of near death experiences, and some of these people have got stories that are incredible.
mhm,
I think that what I went through is so unique of not leaving my body, but that journey to from begging God to take you into heaven and he keeping you here is something that I've never heard before. And I talked to the chaplain at Mercy Hospital about it. And he's looking at me like, wow, how do you know this? What this is really interesting. You need to talk to my colleague that specializes in this kind of stuff.
Mm,
So I know that, and it's not, again, I don't need the notoriety, I don't need the fame. That's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing this, if somebody watches your video here and they can connect with this and they can even change even one day in their life, I'd be happy.
mm.
That's kind of the way I look at this. So, do I have more time now? Not yet. We're still in the transitional phase. We're still dealing with customers and supply chain issue things
Mhm.
and all that. But eventually, here in this next 6 months, it should start to open up a little bit so that I can either focus on writing that book complete and getting it to a publisher or somebody that really believes in the book. And yeah, uh, well, I don't know. Does it sound worthy of a book? I
I
don't
would
know.
say so. Yeah,
Okay.
you have one very interested publisher right here.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm it. And, to be honest with you, there's a lot of people that will say things that they either make up or they don't believe it in their heart. But every word that came out of my mouth today is from the heart.
Mhm.
It came from my heart to my voice to tell you my story firsthand. And I'm just honored to be able to be sharing it. I guess that's all I can say. And
The authenticity comes through, no question. So I
okay,
felt it. Yeah.
well, thank you. I appreciate it. Is there any part of the story that um, didn't make sense, or is did it? Did you understand? Did I
I
make clear?
Yes, no, you did. And I've heard many NDE stories, and I'm just always fascinated by how the people going through it can't really explain how they know that it's real and it's happening, and the information that's coming in, but they know. It's a knowing that you can't articulate, and I just always think that's so neat.
Well, it's like the words of this bolt here that I hold up in front of me. That word called kingpin bolt. As an engineer, as a guy that works on equipment, I've never heard that word before. I've never used that word. How did I come up with that? I couldn't make it up. I mean, I've never heard anybody say that. And why did I do the connection where the threads, the tighter that you tighten the nut
Mhm.
made your connection to Christ more and more and more. And if you didn't do things as well and your connections less and less and less, it's kind of like your rosary or
Right.
whatever you're holding. Um, it's that connection. And there are things in this story, like the 7 people. I wish I could remember the other 4 people, of their backgrounds and things like that. People had asked me. I had a chance to tell another small group, asked me about it, and I told them some of it. I didn't tell them all of what I told you, but they said, "Why can't you remember the other people's names?" And I don't know why. I don't know why these 3 stuck out.
Mhm.
The biker with the one arm with the eagle tattoo on his back. How could I make that up? It's just weird,
Mhm.
but it was so detailed. I just remember right at the elbow, his arm is gone. He can't ride a bike anymore. So he had a tattoo with a clipped wing on that one arm. So they asked me too, have you ever done any research like the World War II bomber pilot? That's musically, he wrote songs and stuff to help the morale in his airplane. I mean, have you ever done any research to that? And to be honest with you, I haven't had time. But it would be interesting if there was a connection there that said somebody, hey, my uncle or my grandfather was had some children from Poland.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that would be great, you know, but I just haven't had time to do that.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
hmm
Maybe one of the listeners will.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, let me know.
yeah.
So,
Mm.
let's see what else. I'm just thankful to be alive. You asked, how does it change your life? Um, here, I'm going to say something that maybe will kind of bring some sense to it. I was happy before I went to the ICU. I asked my wife to take a picture of me, and I was in the first floor. I was waiting to get a room up in the ICU, and I had succumbed to believing that I was going to go to heaven. I just knew. I was happy about it. I was extremely happy. And my wife came in the room, and I said, "Take a picture of me. Take a picture of me." And she looked at me and she said, "Your blue eyes are so big and so happy looking. What is going on?" And I didn't tell her, but I had believed that it's my time and I'm going to heaven. But at the same time, I thought about, if I go, then I'm going to leave my wife, my children, my grandchildren, and they're going to not have me in this world anymore. And I won't see them until they come to heaven. And I don't want that to be for a long time.
Mm.
So I felt like I was letting them down.
Mm.
But yet the pain and the struggle and the torture, that's the only word that I can think of what we went through for COVID. As bad as I had it, it was an hour, a minute, every minute was a torture. It's just horrible. But I was content knowing that I was going to go to heaven at that time. And God didn't take me. And that's why those two songs that I played just sunk right in. And I thought God was talking to me through those songs. So,
No question.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing that with us, spending the time today. Absolutely incredible story. Beautiful. Um, I have a few songs I'm going to be listening to on repeat now. I know I have Casting Crowns in my playlist already, but yeah, The King and Country I'm going to add as well.
I told my wife that I was going to write Pastor Mark as the leader in Casting Crowns, and we had an opportunity through one of she's a member of Infinity or some insurance program, and for certain clients, they had a Christmas concert with Casting Crowns,
Mm.
and we go there, and the first song was Nobody, and that it just hit home again. And I told her, I said, I've got to write him a letter and just explain how powerful his music is and how it touched me personally, and the story that I went through. Just briefly, just saying, I survived a near death experience and COVID, and your song was the first song that I heard when I came back to this earth. And it's so powerful, the
Mm.
music. I've always believed I love good, powerful music,
Mm-hmm.
and that song in itself, and then the King and Country, God Only Knows, that song in itself too says a lot, even though that song was written for something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
But the words I took to mean something different for me, and I'm sure everybody does, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was
Beauty of
really
the lyrics.
powerful, and it helped me. understand that we're all here for a purpose. And God's allowing me to do that still here on this earth. So,
What a good note to end on. I couldn't agree more. We're all here for a purpose. I think that's our one thing we're supposed to figure out in our lifetime is how are we here to serve? What is our purpose in giving back?
yeah. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this. And I do mean that with all my heart. So, even though you're on a screen here, someday maybe I'll meet and I'll get to give you a big hug. And
Absolutely. I'm a big hugger, so we'll bring it in.
all
Uh,
right,
and I'm going to keep in touch with you and check in how the book writing's going.
I will. I will. I appreciate that. You're going to give me the inspiration now to continue with that.
Good.
So, yeah, I'd very much like to, not just because, I just want to say I wrote a book. I want that book to mean something and connect with people. And if it could do that, maybe that is my mission then. Yeah, that's the path that God wants me to take.
Yeah.
And if people like it, even better.
Even better.
Even better. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much. This was such a gift today. So I really appreciate you.
You're very welcome. Sorry. Yeah. And I am that kind of emotional guy. I was always kind of an emotional guy, but ever since I went through what I went through, it's not PTSD, but I allow my emotions to come out instead of holding them inside like most old guys do. I just don't anymore.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lindsay.